I'll go back in for a moment," were the last words Elisabeth Sauer's husband heard her say. They never spoke again. Hit like and subscribe. This is Fierce. The Sahl Hasheesh Resort is situated 18 kilometers south of the tourist hub of Hurghada, along Egypt's Red Sea coastline. It's a popular vacation spot. The sweeping bay, laid with coral sand and bordered by crystal-clear waters, are luxurious and enticing. The promenade, onto which five-star hotels open out onto, stretches the entire length of the bay. On July 1, 2022, something was spotted in the bay. As some tourists stood on the pier and looked out over the glistening water, they thought they saw a dark shadow swimming in the shallows. Then perhaps a flash of gray, as a dorsal fin broke the surface a couple of hundred yards out. But they couldn't be sure. It was a momentary glimpse, and then it disappeared. It was hard to make out exactly what it was, as swimmers and snorkelers splashed about in the water, and the sun reflected off the surface of the Red Sea. Even so, they had seen enough to mention it to the lifeguards. The two tourists walked over to a small group of lifeguards. They told them that they thought they had seen a shark. Immediately, the lifeguards burst into laughter and told them not to worry. There hadn't ever been a shark sighted along this shoreline before. This proved to be a deadly mistake, and little did they know a woman was already dead. Romanian tourist Roxana Donasan had left her hotel room 2 days before, never to return. No one had reported her missing. No one had seen her disappear beneath the waves as she snorkeled along the reef. But it was now discovered that the 44-year-old had been fatally attacked by a shark, and while her body remained in the water along the reef, it enticed sharks closer. It's believed the shark who killed her returned repeatedly to feed. Her body was discovered that morning, but incomprehensibly, the knowledge wasn't made public. Officials didn't want to alarm anyone, and of course, they didn't want the tourism trade to suffer. The woman was severely mauled and disfigured when she was pulled from the sea, but people were allowed to continue to swim, snorkel, and splash about in the waters, even though there was a killer on the loose, and possibly one that had just been spotted by the tourists on the pier. Increased shark encounters in the Red Sea have been attributed to overfishing as sharks travel closer to shore in search for a meal. Only a month before these tragic incidents, a cargo ship carrying thousands of sheep destined for the celebrations of Eid al-Adha sank south of Hurghada. All the animals on board drowned, their carcasses likely providing significant nourishment for the sea life, especially sharks. The influx of fresh meat may have enticed them to the area more so than usual that month. There are 1.2 million tourists entering the waters of the Red Sea each year, so interactions with sharks are going to happen occasionally. But if that occasion is when you're swimming, then it could be disastrous for you. Just as the lifeguards were laughing off the concerns of the tourists who had potentially spotted an ominous shadow beyond the shallows, Elisabeth Sauer, an Australian national, was entering the water. She was on the last day of her vacation and wanted to make the most of it. She had been in Egypt for a whole month with her partner, who was of Egyptian descent. She had spent a lot of time swimming and enjoyed the warm, clear waters and the reef near the shore. She said to her partner that she was going back in one more time, but it turned out to be one more time too many. She half walked, half swam in the shallows, dipping her face below the surface to look at the colorful fish darting around her feet near the reef. She was just 650 feet away from where the other tourists had been pulled from the water. Many other holidaymakers were doing exactly the same thing as Elisabeth, all carefree, all enjoying their holiday behind the relative safety of the deployed shark nets. Less than 15 minutes after it had first been sighted, that ominous shadow in the water headed toward Elisabeth. The 68-year-old pensioner was enjoying retirement and the luxuries it had to offer. She had been a local councillor for the Green Party in her local municipality of Kramsach from 1998 until 2004. She was well known in her hometown and well liked by friends and colleagues. She had a warm and calm demeanor, something that she will be remembered by. She was just yards from the beach and the safety of dry land when she was struck by the shark. It immediately grabbed her leg and yanked it firmly in its jaws. The sudden attack threw Elisabeth forward, and she wheeled around to find her leg clamped between its sharp teeth. She tried to fight back as the shark increased its intensity. It thrashed her around, and she was twisted and turned as the shark rotated through the water. Then, with the most tremendous force, Elisabeth's leg was ripped off. With her body now free, she was able to try and get away. She wasn't being dragged mercilessly by the predator, but it wasn't giving up. It continued to attack Elisabeth. It came back for more, and she continually tried to push it away, while tourists pulled out their phones and began filming the horrifying scenes. Those on the beach and the pier, including her partner, could see the attack unfolding. They could see the fight that Elisabeth was putting up. They screamed for help, for some kind of assistance, yet none came. Where were the lifeguards? People on the pier tried to distract the shark by throwing things at it, but nobody rushed into the water to save Elisabeth. No one was going to risk their life for a stranger. She was on her own. The attack continued. Then, when it was thought things couldn't get any worse, the shark ripped off Elisabeth's arm that she was using to try to push its sandpaper-like snout away from her. She was pushed onto the reef, and for a few shocking moments, she sat there, in complete shock, while the shark swam nearby. It was identified as 2 meters in length and either a mako shark or an oceanic whitetip. Blood poured from Elisabeth's missing arm and leg. She just looked at her missing limbs, trying to make sense of the situation. Terror and shock almost overcame her, but she knew she needed to get help. She needed emergency care, and yet still no one was coming for her. She didn't scream, she didn't cry. She was stunned. She could feel the life fading from her. She was dizzied and dazed. Her body was beginning to shut down as her blood pressure plummeted. Showing just how determined and how much of a fighter she was, she pushed herself off from the reef and swam toward the shore. Horrified onlookers could see the struggle. Elisabeth was surrounded in a pool of deep, dark red, her own blood. Somebody tried to throw her a rope for her to grab onto, but she made it to the beach by herself and immediately collapsed. She had done the hard part. She had got herself out of there. Now it was up to the medical professionals to take over. She was rushed into a waiting ambulance and to Nile Private Hospital in Hurghada, but she died on the way, reportedly from a heart attack. Paramedics tried to revive her, but her injuries were too severe. Help had arrived too late, and the lifeguards who had mocked the tourists for their concerns over a shark were nowhere to be seen.